The main difficulty I used to have with Star Trek fan productions was suspension of disbelief. It's hard to get used to so many totally different actors playing such deeply familiar roles. And then, in 2009, lens flare track happened. Of course, there are some fan productions that avoid this problem by not using any familiar characters, like setting the series on the Farragut in the TOS era instead of the flagship, or the NX-03 Challenger instead of the NX-01 Enterprise. On the other end of the spectrum, we've had fan productions that have brought back bona fide Star Trek alumni in their original roles. Sometimes. So with that in mind, I'm Jamie Nemeth and these are my 10 best fan production tie-ins. Number 10. Far-Flung Sisters, Odyssey, Iliad. On the Odyssey, an Allegiance-class starship built in the late 24th century, we meet Lieutenant Commander Maya Stadi, who is the sister of Veronica Stadi, Voyager's original con officer. Sadly, Veronica was killed when the Caretaker's displacement wave hit the ship and flung it into the Delta Quadrant. By comparison, at least Maya survives the first episode, but she and the rest of the Odyssey crew end up stranded 2.5 million light-years away in the Andromeda Galaxy, when acting Captain Ro Nevin, Ro Laren's brother, detonates their quantum slipstream drive to obliterate the artificial wormhole created by an alien race called the Arkin. I mean, he had good reason. The Arkin were popping warships through it by the dozen and threatening to destroy the Alpha Quadrant as we know it. But still, having to sacrifice your primary means of getting home to destroy the only other way you could have gotten home? Ouch. Number 9. Promotion is futile. Borg Hunters. At first glance, this looks like a group of friends in cosplay having a fun romp through ideas we'd all love to have seen in canon, like Harry Kim finally making captain. But the episode quickly ends up grappling with profound issues. In short, Kim is joined by Captain Chakotay and Borg specialist Dr. Leland Tam on their mission to rescue Borg drones who have become disconnected from the collective. They have a quick Zoom call with 7 of 9, aka Annika Hansen. She basically says she's always around to lend an ear, but doesn't want to come back to Starfleet. Then Admiral Janeway delivers some bad news. Their mission has been scrubbed with immediate effect because the new administration view all Borg, even disconnected ones, as enemy combatants. And they're like, so what do we do with Grant? Perhaps this change in Starfleet attitude ties in with the hostility Seven experienced after returning to Earth, as she talks about in Star Trek Picard. Plus, it could be seen as a prelude to how Starfleet didn't waste any time with that synth ban. Talking of preludes, number 8. Axanar! Prelude to Axanar. The premise is huge, the stars are huge, the effects are huge, but the delays have been huge and the controversy has also been huge, and it's a quagmire I don't want to get into. So let's concentrate on the tie-ins, and I mean out of universe, so many Star Trek and or sci-fi alumni. In universe though, only Gary Graham reprises his canon role as Ambassador Saval from Star Trek Enterprise. Axanar uses a documentary format to tell the story of the 4 years' war between the Federation and the Klingons, from the perspective of people on all sides. The infamous Battle of Axanar brought an end to the war and was required reading at Starfleet Academy. Captain Kirk mentions this when he meets Captain Garth of Izar in the TOS episode Whom Gods Destroy. Unfortunately, by this point, Garth, who was pivotal in the Federation's victory, had descended from hero to madman. Number 7. You're in My Way. Hidden Frontier, Enemy Unknown. The first time we meet Commander Elizabeth Shelby is in the TNG two-parter The Best of Both Worlds. Yep, the one with Locutus. But the battle between the Enterprise and the Borg Cube wouldn't be the only exchange of phaser fire we'd see in these episodes. Shelby wants to be First Officer, and after being given permission to speak freely, she tells Riker, "You're in my way." It's a line she uses again in the ready room of the USS Excalibur, under the command of Captain John Knapp, who replies, "I bet you say that to all your commanding officers." I see what you did there. Shelby finally gets the big chair at the end of Hidden Frontiers Season 2, though she doesn't officially get her 4th pip until the middle of Season 3. Oh yeah, some of these fan productions are like stumbling on a lost box set. This one goes all the way up to Season 7. Number 6. Yars, Today's Enterprise. A Tale of Two Cities. It's said that Star Trek Prodigy is geared more towards kids, which implies that all the other series are more for adults. Well, this entry started out in a form that was definitely not for children. Very much so. But an edited, more PG version found its way onto YouTube, and it's become a very well-respected fan film in its own right. The story centres on the return of Tasha Yar. Now, as we all know from canon, Tasha gets killed off unceremoniously by Armus the Oilslick. Then a few years later, the Enterprise C emerges from a temporal rift, changing the timeline so Tasha didn't die. But she learns what happens to her in the main timeline via Guinan, decides to transfer to the Enterprise C and help the crew complete the suicide mission, but a few of the crew actually survive, get captured by the Romulans. And long story short, Sela, Tasha's half-Romulan daughter, who tells Captain Picard that her mother died when she was 4, having been executed while attempting to escape from her father. But Picard is not convinced. In A Tale of Two Cities, the Enterprise D stumbles upon some strange energy readings on a barren M-class planet. They investigate and discover Tasha Yar in cryosleep. She gets the chance to explain a bit about what happened and reunite with the crew one final time. But this is far from slushy fan service, the plot thickens, and all is not as it seems. Bonus tie-in points for the flute from The Inner Light. Oh, okay, it's a penny whistle, but close enough. And in fact, Giles Aston, who plays Captain Picard in this, also appears in... Number 5. Getting the digs in. Intrepid, the Stone Unturned. The USS Intrepid encounters a runabout that's refusing to respond to hails and firing torpedoes at what appears to be a cloaked ship. The crew manage to disable and capture the runabout, which finally gets the attention of the lone pilot, none other than Captain Jean-Luc Picard. It turns out they've waded into, and interrupted, a classified mission, and so now Captain Daniel Hunter and his crew are tagging along too, although all without knowing where the ship is being taken or why. And when Hunter finds out his ship is being turned upside down for an archaeological expedition, he's incensed. Captain Picard, my ready room, now. He wants to know what's going on, and he's not waiting any longer. You refuse to identify yourself, and you fired on a planet under my protection. Oh yes, says Picard. I've seen what comes of your protection. Picard seems uncharacteristically snarky, slamming Hunter for his actions in Intrepid's first episode, Heavy Lies the Crown, in which the then Commander Hunter gave the order to torpedo his own captain's out-of-control shuttle so it wouldn't plough into the colony on the planet below. All you had to do was change the trajectory and make it do the Picard manoeuvre. No, not that one. No, not that one. That one. Okay, he didn't literally say it that way, but he's remembering back to when he helped save a cadet by getting him to skip his shuttle off the planet's atmosphere in the TNG episode Coming of Age. Hunter does some soul-searching and simulations, devastated that he never thought of it, but others on the crew reassure him that it still might not have worked, or worse, may have led to the shuttle breaking up in the atmosphere and raining fiery debris on the colony. Picard does apologise later on, and they make it up by the end of the episode at least. Number 4. Setting things in motion. Continues to boldly go. Now, as we all know, between the original series and the motion picture, the USS Enterprise NCC 1701 goes through a complete refit, retaining a similar iconic silhouette, but with brand new warp nacelles on swept-back pylons, as well as many other changes inside and out, including the uniforms. In the motion picture, we watch the crew reacting to seeing the refit for the first time, but in the final episode of the Continue series, we get to see the crew preparing for that transition. It's a lovely way to blend the two together, particularly as the cast and crew of Continues didn't make this transition easy for themselves by getting the look and the feel and the very ambience of the original series so spot on. That final speech is a beautiful and an emotional watch, poignant not only because it's the end of an era for the characters, but for the real-life cast too. Number 3. Forwarding the signs of aging. New voyages to serve all my days. So, you have Walter Koenig, a Star Trek The Original Series legend, and he's eager and willing to reprise his iconic role in your fan production. The only problem is that he looks a lot older now, and your fan production is set when he's supposed to look young. How to solve this conundrum? But of course, this is sci-fi! Chekhov contracts a virus which artificially ages him. Ta-da! Walter Koenig! This is an ingenious way to faithfully weave an original TOS cast member into the story, and seeing Koenig play off against a hallucination of his younger self, in the form of New Voyage's regular Andy Bray, is a delight to watch, not to mention listen to. Number 2. I know of such a crew. Renegades. So, you have Walter Koenig, a Star Trek The Original Series legend, and he's eager and willing to reprise his iconic role in your fan production. No, we're not caught in a time loop. Chekhov is back. He's now the head of Starfleet security, and trying to sensitively get to the bottom of the rot that's forming at Starfleet's core. He needs someone outside of Starfleet, not Section 31, someone else to help him. Tuvok tells him, I know of such a crew. Some are characters we've not encountered before, but again, some are alumni. Robert Picardo features as Dr. Lewis Zimmerman rather than the EMH, although often has to appear as a hologram. It'll make sense when you watch it. And you know how there was that Bring Back Icheb campaign that sadly didn't work out? Well, that's the beauty of fan productions. If we want Manu Intiraymi to be Icheb, and Manu Intiraymi wants to be Icheb, we can make it happen. And as the eagle-eyed amongst you will have spotted at the start of this video, we also have Richard Hurd returning as Admiral Owen Paris, Tom Paris's father, reprising his Star Trek Voyager role. And that's not the last entirety of Star Trek spanning crossover I have to show you. Number 1, far from a B movie. Because Enterprise B, you'll see in a second. Of Gods and Men. So, you have Walter Koenig, a Star Trek The Original Series legend. No, okay, we won't do it again. The order of the other items in this list could be shuffled around, but this one is definitely my personal number 1. It could make a whole list of tie-ins all by itself. What doesn't it have? If you thought the bridge Scotty visited on the holodeck in Relics was good, in Of Gods and Men, the Federation have built a replica of the entire original Constitution-class USS Enterprise as a very special museum ship, the Enterprise M. We've got the much-missed Nichelle Nichols as Captain Uhura, Walter Koenig as Chekhov. Alan Ruck gets a lot more screen time than he had in Star Trek Generations, giving him a proper chance to flesh out a mature Captain John Harriman, and he gets to play an evil Harriman in an altered timeline. Who alters the timeline? Charlie Evans from the TOS episode Charlie X, using the Guardian of Forever from the TOS episode The City on the Edge of Forever. It's directed by Tim Russ, who reprises his role as Tuvok, and there's plenty more Star Trek alumni, although not all in their original roles. There's also a tie-in within a tie-in, with Kirk's nephew played by James Corley, who plays Kirk himself in the new Voyager series. The way I've described it makes it sound like chaos, but honestly, it's a really clever, heartwarming, nostalgic piece of cinema? Television? Whatever. A lot of thought and a lot of effort went into it. It does shed loads of fan service without ever getting too icky about it, and I love it. Go give it a watch. And that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel. Let us know which of these productions you've seen before, or which ones you'll now be checking out for yourself in the comments below. I can be found on most social media as Jamie Nemeth, TikTok as jamie.nemeth, and Instagram as Jamie Fiddle. Diolch am oilio.